Current in progress. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight to our January meeting of the San Bruno Amateur Radio Club. And we are fortunate to have our special guest tonight, Marshall Gage Schlice. And he will take it over now, and he's going to tell you all kinds of weird things about what he does for Christmas decorations in his neighborhood.
All right, perfect. So for those who don't know me, I'm Gage Schlice. I am the fire marshal here for the city of San Bruno. Probably met most of you one time or the other if you've seen me somewhere. Thank you, Michael, for attending, and Ari as well. When Dave approached me about this, I was like, really? But then he brought back why he wants me to talk about it. So going back to 2016, I've been doing this for a few years now. I have one of those crazy Griswold Christmas houses with lots of lights, right? I've always liked Christmas lights. And I'm also kind of techie at the same time. So then I researched, I found out they had, these new LED light bulbs, which they burn a lot less electricity and they change colors. And then, so I had LED light bulbs, and then they have RGB LED light bulbs. So I can choose any of the 256 million colors and different brightnesses and all LEDs. And I thought, wow, what can I do with this with Christmas lights? So that was my beginning of the Schlice Family Light Show that I put on at the house every single year. And I've been doing it since 2016. It gets probably bigger and bigger every year because who else would spend this much money on Christmas lights other than me and all the other equipment? So I put a little presentation together just to kind of show what it is, what I do. If you guys have ever watched like the great Christmas light shows on TV, or it's very similar to those houses. All my lights dance around to music and different color and swirl and do a bunch of crazy stuff. So let me start my slideshow, and then I'll all right. Can you guys see my screen? Yes. Okay. Yeah. I'll just keep it simple. All right. So most people say you do what, right? Because they're like, why do you spend so much time and effort to put on a Christmas light show, right? I have young kids. They're older now, but when I started, they were quite a bit younger. My daughter, when I started, was 4, and my son was 8. So it was in like the prime time of, fancy fun Christmas type stuff. So I'm going to go over software, how it works on the software side, the hardware side, what actually the stuff is. The communication networking thing is what Dave is interested in, and most of you guys, and the networking, and I got a couple of videos at the end. So the software, it's a free software. It's made by a company called Xlights. They're a bunch of, there's a lot of us all across the United States and now all over the world that work on this software in the back end. In short, it's a very, very fancy Excel spreadsheet with a GUI interface, and everything is on the back end is almost kind of through Excel. But it's a free open source program, so it doesn't cost you anything to actually download it or use it. It's all free and open source, which is great. And it enables you to design and create, these light displays, not just Christmas lights. Some people do it for Halloween decorations. Some people do it for 4th of July's. They use this software at Disneyland and other theme parks to do big light shows. And it's through a thing called DMX controllers and through the Ethernet. With the software, you can lay out different designs. You can do Christmas trees. You can do wreaths. You can do pumpkins. You can do everything else. And then with Xlights, it allows you to sync the light show with music. So that way, when the lights change around, they're changing with the music. And when certain people are singing, it changes with the lights. Like I said, it takes the software and makes all the lights twinkle. Now, how do I go to the next slide? There we go. So now you guys see a bunch of pretty colors on the screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so this is the software itself. Kind of the way it looks. It's not very fancy. It's all just basic windows, and each box refers back to something else. And this is how we kind of make the whole entire music sequence. So on the top part where you see the blue squiggly lines, that's actually the music. And below that has all the different groups. And what you see right now is a piano. So you can have a piano made of lights, and you can have the keys turn to the beat of the music. So this is just one example of what the software looks like and what we can do. And the software is not really the exciting stuff. The software really is the time suck of everything. I've spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and probably thousands of hours programming the lights. I try to change them every single year, so we spend a lot of time with the software. Lots and lots of lights. So I get all my lights from a site called Holiday Coro. They started off selling Coro. What Coro is those who aren't familiar with it, it's like cardboard, but made out of plastic. So they take a piece of Coro and cut out pieces to make decorations. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. On the left of the screen, you'll see actually the lights themselves. Those are the little RGB lights. Each light has its own microchip. There's 3 wires going inside of it. One's a positive, so it's 12-volt positive. One's a 12-volt negative, and one's the data line. So from the start is node 1, and then it goes node 2, node 3, node 4, all the way up to however many nodes you want to put in line. And the data itself transmits over each bulb, and it repowers it and retransmits it, repowers it, retransmits it all the way down the line. Like I said, they're all 12 volts. They're smart pixels. They're RGB and LED, and they're 2811 standard. There are different standards out there. 2811 standard is usually more for home size or home users. There are better standards that are more expensive for more commercial type people. This is kind of an example of how everything works. So like I said, everything runs on 12 volts, but the lights themselves run on 5 volts. So the power, right? We all use 110 or 120 power AC. And that thing on the bottom right of the screen is a 12 volt power source. And that gives power to the lights. And the top left of the screen is a controller box. So if you look at that controller box, the top of it is the power supply. And below that is actually the board, which controls all the lights. And all the wires coming out of the bottom of that box go to all the different strings. So for instance, what you're looking at the bottom left is a Christmas tree that has 800 lights in that Christmas tree. And there's 16 strings of 50 in each string, which makes 800, right? 16 times whatever it is. It's 800 lights. That controller on the top left controls each string individually. And then you put all the lights, and that makes a whole entire light. And you'll see what that looks like here in a second. But that's just one display that you can actually use with the lights. The big screen on the right shows how everything works. So you have a computer that has the software that goes over a network, over an Ethernet cable to actually that box, controller box, and that controller box talks to the lights. So it's one big, huge network. So this is that's why it's all about networking and the interface between the computer and the boards and the lights. Here's a couple close-ups of them. So the basics, you need the controller, which is in that far left side of the screen with the power supply. And this one, it only has 4 outputs. If you look at the last slide, that one had 16 outputs. So this one only has 4. So you have 1 output, and that would go to your string of lights, which is on the top right. And those lights would be plugged into that snowflake on the bottom. So that snowflake is made out of Coro. It's plastic cardboard, so it's weatherproof. You can stick lights in it, and you can hang it from somewhere. And then when you go through your programming, you tell it that's actually a snowflake with this many lights, and it makes it go on at a certain time. That's simply the basics. There's way more to this, but I didn't want to bore you guys with all the super technical stuff. Here's an example of what it looks like when you're done. And the programming side. Can you guys hear the music?
Jingle bells ringing, jingle bells ringing, snowing and blowing up through the fun. Now the jingle hop has begun. Jingle bells rock, jingle bells time, jingle bells time. And prancing in Jingle Bell Square, in the frosty air.
Wow.
So I'll save you guys all the whole entire song. So that example is what it would look like on the screen. So when you're programming my house, I put my house outline in there like you can see on the screen. And then I have my tree, which is on the far left-hand side, and a star above the tree. And on the tree, you can actually have, since there's so many lights, you can almost have it act as like a TV screen. You know, the pixels aren't like an HD or anything, but if the tree's far enough back, you can still see images on the Christmas tree as it runs by. And then the garage door is full of lights as well. So that almost acts as actually a computer screen. And then I have singing Christmas trees on the top right. And those are placed on my front yard. So as actually the person singing, the mouths are moving to actually the music. And you have a little drummer boy on the bottom right.
Man.
Very cool.
So that is
Wow.
what it looks like when it's all said and done. So it's from start to finish. It obviously takes a long time to get there. You just can't do that overnight. It does cost a lot of money, I'm not gonna lie. And a lot of time programming and putting lights up every year and, you know, making it look clean and safe because you don't want your house to burn down either, because it'd be pretty bad if the fire marshal's house burnt down. So now I want to talk about the communication side of things and how everything communicates and talks. So going back to when we first started this, it was me and my neighbor, and this is our neighborhood. So my house is on the left-hand side and his house is on the far right-hand side. So that's my house on the left circled, and that's his house on the far bottom right circled. The problem, we both have these lights and we both started competing against each other. Like who can put the bigger light show on, right? So we decided, why fight against each other and why not we combine forces? Why don't we actually do the same light show? So when people drive down the street, they can see multiple houses showing the same light show at one time. So rather than going to my house and his house and my house and back to his house, we wanted to be able to show the same light show at our houses. That's what we started off with. We started off, but how do we do that? The problem is this: we're over 1,000 feet away from each other. Those that know anything about networking, you can't run an Ethernet cable, a communication cable, 1,000 feet away
Mhm.
across people's properties, public streets and everything else. I mean, could it be done? Yeah, probably, but someone might trip on the cable or you'd have to amplify it, and it's 1,000 feet. It's too far away to run a typical cable. So what we decided to do is link our houses together through networking. So this is our setup. So my house is on the left, his house is on the right, and we both have a Ubiquiti Air Fiber 24 gigahertz carrier. It's point to point. So what that allows us to do is allows us to have a gigabit connection. So it's 1,000 megabytes per second, point to point between my house and his. It operates actually on a worldwide license-free 24 gigahertz radio band, and it's 24.05 to 24.25 gigahertz. And that band's completely open and free. And it's powered by a passive 48 volt PoE. So mine and his, and by the way, he's an IT professional by trade. My friend that lives down the street. We both have very robust home internet setups, all by Ubiquiti in our houses. So it was easy we plugged these into our existing systems and ran a separate subnet just for Christmas lights. So he still has his internet connection, I still have my internet connection, and then we have a shared Christmas light network from point to point. So now that we have point to point between my house and his, now me and him can control, I can go on his network, he can go on my network, I can control his Christmas lights, he can control my Christmas lights, and we can go back and forth, which is great. That's what we had for a while. It was just us two. But after the second year, people were like, how do we get involved in this? So then we started having other neighbors that wanted to start putting the same lights on their house, not to the extremes of mine or his, but still some lights. And people are getting bigger and bigger every year and spending more and more money on them every year. A couple $100 here, a couple $100 there. But now how do we communicate to those people? So what we did is actually on both sides of the systems, we have our Ubiquiti Air Max Rocket M3 base station with a 2.4 gigahertz Omni antenna. So now what we do is we broadcast our own Christmas network locally within our extra area. It doesn't go too far. It operates off 2.4 gigahertz. We chose 2.4 gigahertz because it travels farther than the 5 gigahertz system for our immediate needs. And we wanted more spread or in depth where people can pick up on the network rather than faster. So that's why we went with the 2.4 gigahertz and the 10 dB Omni antenna. So you can see on mine, it's down lower. I had to get my house. So these antennas need a direct line of sight. They need to be able to see each other.
Mhm.
I had a couple of obstructions, so I put mine that's a like an 8-foot pole above my roof line, just so I can see his roof line because there was a few obstructions in the way. So we had his is on top of his roof and he has a clear shot. I had to go a little higher. So my Omni antenna is mounted a little lower than his. But that's just because, but everything works.
Hmm.
And then at the individual houses, so any of the houses that wanted to be on the network for Christmas, we get that controller box, and then we take the Ethernet cable and plug it into a Air Nano station, and the Air Nano station reads our network that we broadcast over the whole entire neighborhood. And the most interesting fact about all of this is what's required to run this setup. What do you guys think is required to run all this on the back end? No, not really. This may surprise everybody, but my controller, my computer I use to actually run this whole entire setup is this.
Wow.
Does everybody know what that is?
Well,
Raspberry Pi.
That's called a Raspberry Pi. It's a Raspberry Pi 4. They have a 5 now, which is even more powerful.
Yeah.
That's the size that computer right there costs $40.
Oh my God.
So on that we have on the Raspberry Pi, it has an Ethernet connection. It has a radio antenna, like a audio output, and the audio output goes to our own radio station. We broadcast our own radio station, and I have another antenna for a radio station that we broadcast at 107.9 is the last dial on your radio. So during Christmas, we turn on and we amplify the radio. So we take over 107.9 and broadcast all the music over the radio waves. So that way we're not blaring the music outside. We're you can listen to the music at your own level in your own car without annoying the neighbors, because not everybody's super into Christmas like I am, and they don't want to listen to the same songs over and over again for a month at a time. So we broadcast all of the radio, broadcast all of the music over the radio station.
That's fantastic.
So that's my Christmas light show in a nutshell.
I love it. I love it.
I think you deserve a medal, Gage.
Oh geez, no. I just do it if my kids liked it. Yeah, it's obviously it's getting out of a little hand, but it is
You
I mean,
start in August?
no, I start right after Halloween. So I have a Halloween light show as well. I didn't put any slides in there for Halloween. So I have a bunch of singing pumpkins. I have a 4-foot by 4-foot pumpkin that sings. And then I have 12 2-foot by 2-foot pumpkins that flash to go to the Halloween songs. So I
That's
have a
cool.
Halloween light show. And then when I start taking that one down is when I start putting up my Christmas light show. And it takes me about a month a month and a half to get everything set. There's a lot of stuff in the back end, like a lot of the stuff doesn't come pre-built. So if I want a new display, I have to build it. I have to get the wires, I have to cut them, I have to resolder new wires on, add extensions, check for power loss, because you can only run 12 volts through a wire for so long before it drops below 5 volts. And once it drops below 5 volts, it won't light up the light bulb any farther. So you have to do a thing called power injection, where you cut the wire, you add a little dongle, and then you just inject power halfway through, just 12 volts, halfway through the line. That way it re-amplifies and keeps 12 volt all the way down.
What sort of songs do you pick for Halloween?
For Halloween, Halloween don't have enough. There's the Ghostbuster song. There's you put me on the spot now. I know when I first programmed them, I haven't done much for Halloween. Halloween show's been the same for a while now. What are the other ones? They're all, I can't think of them right now, but
I can't either. Sorry.
I have like 6 or 7 Halloween songs that I play that singing pumpkins, but I do more on the Christmas light side. But yeah. Any questions?
How many families do you think you've or households you've roped into this for Christmas?
We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 houses right now that are that are roped in.
That's great. Now, do you put up a little sign somewhere to tell folks while they're in their cars to tune to a certain channel?
Yeah, so I built an LCD screen.
Okay.
Using just what are they? They're LCD panels. I put 4 of them together. I link them. I use a Blackbone. It's another Raspberry Pi type device.
Okay.
And then I make my own custom graphics, and it scrolls across the screen like, Merry Christmas, welcome, to Kirk Hill Drive, which is the street we live on. Tune your radio station to 107.9. So it kind of scrolls, and then when the music's playing, I have that kind of dim, so it's not really a focus point, and then it'll come back on between the breaks of the music.
Does the PD ever have to come out and do traffic control?
No, not bad. There's a neighborhood down the street from me that's way more extreme than we are.
Really?
That's where everybody usually goes. We get a good crowd, but like my buddy wants to compete with that neighborhood, but it's a cul-de-sac, so there's like 6 houses on the cul-de-sac, and they all participate in it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
So everybody goes there because it's like one big huge show and one stop. Ours, you kind of drive through the neighborhood, and my house and his house are pretty lit up, but some of the other houses aren't as big yet. So like I said, it does the biggest holdback is money, because it's not cheap. Yeah, nothing's cheap anymore. But
Do you try to add a new feature every year or reprogram? You said you reprogram, but do you try to add other features?
sometimes I try to add over the years. Like when I first had it, I just had pretty much my outline of my house, and that's all the lights I had. And I think the following year I got my Christmas tree, the big mega tree, and then I added, more snowflakes. And I have 10 little Christmas trees that go on the ground now. Just every year I add more and more and more. But then when you add more, you have to spend more time programming, more time editing. If you get a new neighbor that wants to join on, then you have to add their house to the design. And it's excuse me, I've been doing it for a long time, or a longish time. It's just, it's a lot of work. I'm tired.
It'd be a full-time job.
Doing my house wouldn't be that bad. It's honestly, it's adding all the other houses in the neighborhood, because we have to statically assign them IP addresses on our Christmas light network.
Yeah.
Then we have to actually get their controllers and static IP address their controllers, and then add all of those into actually the existing show that we have from last year. And that takes a long time too, because you got to make sure all the IPs are spaced out properly, and you got to then when you put all the lights up, me being the guy doing all the programming, if something's not working, I have to, my neighbors will call me and hey, can you come fix this one? Or can you come fix my lights aren't turning on. Can you come fix them? So I spend more time fixing everybody else's lights than focusing on mine. because they don't know what they don't, I mean, I don't blame them because they just were like, hey, what do we got to buy?
Yeah.
They don't know how it works.
Right.
That's absolutely amazing, Gage.
You make a business of it eventually.
No, it just,
How
there's a
come
lot of
I-
people
how
that
mo-
do it.
How many more years till retirement, Gage?
4 years and 22 days.
See that? Here you
Not that
go,
he's
you know? You got 4 years to ramp up.
And 30 minutes too.
Yeah, exactly.
42 days and 30 minutes.
So yeah,
Uh,
so that rocket I have on top of mine is the same thing you guys use for your network.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep,
For
we're
the,
using
for the Arden network, right?
pardon me? The Arden Network. Where we're trying to, yep. Yeah. So that's fascinating. Does anybody else have a question for Gage? I mean, I think that's pretty cool.
Fabulous.
Anybody else have a comment or a question? Okay.
Very cool. Thank you for
Hey,
sharing.
Hold your hand up, Tom, if you want to interject something, okay?
I'm good.
you're fine, Tom. You're fine. Don't worry. I want to thank Gage for joining us to tell us about that. When he told me that in the outside the in the parking lot behind the fire department, when I handed him this thing, he goes, "Yeah, I got one of those top of my house." I said, "Say what?" And then I started to hear the unraveling of this tale of Christmas lights, and he had me on that. So I'm glad that he's been able to join us tonight and tell us exactly what he does, and I think that's great. So Gage, I want to thank you once again for going to the trouble of throwing some slides together so we could see what you're doing, and I want to say thank you on
Yeah.
behalf of the club. That was a good way to start the year off. On a good fun thing. So thank you for that.
Of course.
So
Well,
anyway,